Okay, and we're back, YouTube.
Let me start the question here. Even though I'm not appearing on the screen, the screen is somewhat like a voice coming from the recesses of the ear or whatever. And I use that term precisely because I think that there's a psychological aspect of this that I'm going to get into. But I first just wanted to get your response. What was your reaction to this discussion? What do you think about it in general? Do you like it? First of all, psychologically, emotionally, do you find it persuasive, not persuasive? Anything catch your attention, jump out at you, how to make you scream or?
It wasn't about content, but I was struck with the speed and vigor with which he spoke. And I wondered if he had any notes at all. I just mentioned, I asked Terry that question, and it was done so quickly and so vigorously that, and I doubt that he memorized something. But his presentation is very good.
It was very high energy. I got some videos I show in my classes of Adler, and this one was the more high energy I've seen. I noticed that too.
You know, I was, as I was listening to him, I was thinking of some of the conversations I've had with some of my buddies of late, talking about America. And some of the language that's come up. Bill, we're at war today. This is a war. They're coming to get us. They're coming across our borders. And my wife and I are having a constant fight in our house about my rights to bear and carry a gun and her rights to stop weapons in this country. So, I think America is in a state of war, and it is very much an internal war. And I don't know whether this was done, but it was sweet and sounded good then, but really, in my mind, it doesn't apply. And how do you handle the issue of atomic war when it gets into the hands of religious fanatics? All this stuff, to me, just seems to go right out the window. And it's nice chat from the 60s, but what land are you living in, Dorothy, is all over with. That's my emotional response.
Well, he does have a state, nation-state model of war. Coming out of World War II, it's understandable. In the wake of Samuel Huntington's analysis of the clash of civilizations, you have a different kind of paradigm. It's not really a nation-state. I'm certainly worried, and we have to adapt that, I guess, analogically to.
What I want to focus on here is his general approach to attacking the problem. What struck me about it is the extent to which his whole interest in conversation and Great Books conversation is connected with global peace. He sees this whole Great Books movement as a necessary condition for achieving this state that he thinks is possible. And also that the question I wanted to see how he reacted, that he had the same reaction to me, is do you consider this, or would you consider it if you were to analyze what he's saying and not know his background? Would you say that this was more of a philosophical analysis or a psychological analysis?
Felt psychological to me. I mean, I feel like I was just saying to Dr. Hancock how I was curious of what principles would this world government use? What would it start from? If it's going to start from common agreement on ideas about things, we haven't even reached that yet. So we can't do that. So what principles? And I thought of July 4th with the United States. We are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Those were our principles in America, at least. So it felt to me that he didn't really address that, and that's why I feel like it was more how he thought that we could solve this in the mind, and not that we could solve this by coming up with starting points that we all agree.
Well, there's reference in the ancient Greek polis, it seems to me to indicate it's psychological, that a group of people are painfully aware of how vulnerable they are to the next polis, putting them at threat.
Well, he does prove that out on that. I guess to a later example would be if the enemy, if you were in the range of the enemy's artillery, if your capital was in the range of your enemy's artillery, then then the war, that's when the war was lost. Defeat was inevitable. Because your capital's under siege. And then he talks about this is the part of the potential for nuclear war. So, well, we're all under the gun in theory right now. Someone, if they decided to, could liberate the place that we're sitting at right now. We've all, what's in the background, like we could draw out from somewhere. And so the psychology of it is still there, in that sense.
My problem is, in my lifetime, the peace has been maintained throughout the 60s and 70s and the 80s up to now through a balance of power, not through literature. And the books he's talking about are all from Western society. But a bigger part of the world is reading the Quran and interpreting that. So literature, and philosophical literature, I don't see as a resolution to anything. Anyway, just sort of reinforce the concept of Western society and Western principles that I don't think are applicable on a global. That conversation has left the world a long time ago.
I'd like to point out something which is really, I found amazing here. If we look at the Islamic point of view on this, they have this division of the abode of Islam, Islam and Harb, the abode of war. There's always a state of war, and even there's no such concept as peace with Islam. It's hudna, it's an armistice, exactly like I was saying. And looking at the conditions that he gives for peace. They do have law, which would be Islamic law, right? And they do have some government, whether it is the ideal caliphate or it's some other form of government like a kingdom or something like that. But they don't have the conversation part. That's what I found very, very different. There's no discussion, simply. So there's also within, and this is interesting because Sayyid Qutb, one of the leaders of the founders of the Muslim Brotherhood, said that Islam was a religion of peace because once you have Sharia, you have peace, right? Yeah, yes, exactly. So, but the truth is that if you look at those places that do have Sharia, there is hardly, stable peace. And I think there's this piece of conversation that's missing.
Yeah. Just to continue your line, we're talking with Thomas about these two books, John Paul II and Francis, and I think the discussion, I don't know if it is philosophical, but it should be philosophical. I mean, the discussion that Andrew proposes. If you look at John Paul II, that is very phenomenology helps to produce this dialogue. I mean, we all have different ways to perceive the reality, but if we resort to the different phenomenologies, we can understand each other and probably find ways to connect and have peace. And what Francis first proposes is discernment view. Discernment is on the same line. I mean, take your time, do your reflection, have your spiritual discernment, whatever, and it will help you to find ways to solve things that otherwise don't have a solution and you need to go to war on. So I think, and both books, they have a very profound philosophical foundation. So I think definitely the solution is more, I don't know if he says that or not, the English is not so good, but philosophy definitely is a way to find peace.
The reason I asked that question is because several weeks ago, Bill McVeigh, Reverend McVeigh over there, had You mentioned something to me about Adler and about his psychological training. That's, his major interest, and that he never gave this up. And you see this in so many of his works, like his work in God and the Professors, where he talks about the pathology of the university being produced by the pathology of the minds of the professors that's just spread out and extended itself spatially throughout the culture in a kind of intellectual space. It's almost a natural inclination on his part to treat War and Peace as psychological aspect. But is it possible to do it in any other way than to treat it from a psychological standpoint?
I think there is a psychological background to it. There's, of course, he mentions the actual war and the state of war. And this state of war, he explains it, he develops this idea further, and he talks about the disposition. So I think that obviously it's not a nation acting, it's men acting in that nation. Of course, there are other things that are there, maybe not as developed as that one, such as hope and other passions that would be very important to deal with the subject of war and peace.
Right. In fact, he mentions one, which is jealousy.
Yes.
As being a chief emotional condition, and jealousy being caused, if you recall, in St. Thomas by competition. So, if we could get rid of the competition, somehow you would be able to get rid of war.
Let me come at it this way. The story is very complicated. I come from Missouri. We have a very ugly situation in Missouri that really turned everything topsy-turvy in our perception of what America was. Maybe not the rest of the country. We have a police officer in Missouri, Ferguson, Missouri, who was called to an incident at home in an African-American public neighborhood in a small town. And in that home, it was a mother with a baby, and he went in, and he was saving the life of the baby. And in the process of doing that call, he met the squad car. There was a store that had been broken into. Robbery had been attempted by 3 African American guys. He was called to attend to that break-in as a police officer. And the kid who had broken in was a huge, big kid. Football player, athlete. And the toxicology case after showed that he was still in the trunk. He was struggling, okay? Big guy, big. And police have a right to use firearms to defend their life in situations like this. And when you pull out a police revolver, you can shoot 6 rounds before you know it, and then boom, 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 goes on down. So you follow standard police procedure, approved by the courts, justified by the Supreme Court, all by law, right to defend himself as an officer protecting his life. And he shot the kid, and the kid died. And we had riots for days in Missouri. People went in with baseball bats and fires and burned down all the business sections. All these people who were entrepreneurs had their business and their livelihoods, and all the people supported. Eric Holder, the Attorney General of the United States of America, point by law, the defender of law and justice, came down there as representative of the law, the government, and immediately sided with the rioters as a philosopher of oppression before the law was even brought into the thing. And the police officer was tried by the public media, okay, that Black Lives Matter, which had nothing to do with rule by law and the militia.
So the grand jury acquitted.
That acquitted him immediately. There was no case there whatsoever. It was of every right. Now, once upon a time in America, that police officer would have been given an award by the city of Ferguson as a hero for defending the citizens of Ferguson from a criminal. But now, the criminal is portrayed by the Attorney General as a victim of oppression and a saint. So to me, the whole thing, in America, has turned topsy-turvy. When the attorneys become the philosophers, and not the interpretive law. So the system of law, and as Adler said in there, I'm not so sure he meant by that, and the Constitution can keep evolving. He didn't say being interpreted. I think these are phrases that he's throwing out that I have real problems handling with today. I live in a society where attorney generals become philosophers and ruling by law. So that's a big part of the equation that we put out there. And that's the thing that we're losing in our society. There's no leadership in law anymore. It's disrespected. As a matter of fact, if you get criminalized, if you try to stand up for the law. Problem.
Well, this, I think what Adler is bringing up a good point here, that the necessary condition for resolving disputes is by means of conversation, and to have that conversation that is peaceful as a result is by means of conversation. And to have that conversation, you have to have rule of government. Now that becomes the question: what is that? What is that about? In other words, why is that the case? Is it true that it's only by means of rule of government that you can have peace among human beings, or these sort of rules?
It seems like government becomes necessary when those governed each have a different function, and that these functions need to be coordinated. But if we all are doing the same thing, then perhaps there's no need for strictly a government to unify us. We all get up, pick up a table. We don't need government.
Right. Yeah, but if you're all doing the same, identically the same thing, you'd be one individual, would be no one different.
In the case that he talks about, though, a government that's recognized as just would be a condition for this to produce peace.
Right.
And whether it's in current Muslim societies or in Ferguson, there apparently are substantial numbers of people who don't see things that way.
Right.
And so we don't have peace, we have government. But until you get, well, and then that's the long-term process would be then, well, then, however this has come about, there's always been this way, but as long as there is a substantial number of people extremely disaffected, then no, you won't have this.
Right.
And Adler's not advocating, well, he's not advocating it, but peace will be imposed. But that's not true peace. That's just until the balance of forces changes again, and there's some kind of uprising overthrow of authority, but people will violently express their feeling that the situation is extremely unjust.
Yeah, there's a psychological condition that arises now. I was struck when I was reading this, and a couple of the articles, it's not from the book on the Northeast. St. Thomas' statement at the beginning was so contradictious, where he says, according to Aristotle and many, the office of the wise man is to know water. And to be able to water, you get an understanding of the nature of water by observing the rule of government, by observing rule. How a ruler's rule, that there's a necessary condition between the existence of any kind of order and some sort of rule by a government. But by the government, he's talking about reason. And that there has to be some sort of reasoning faculty involved in uniting, unifying a multitude into an organization. And what struck me as was wrong with Adler here is that Adler is conceiving of the conditions of peace to be those in which everybody belongs to the same organization. If you don't think you belong to the organization, then you're never going to have any peace. Why? Because you can't talk about the same things. You're not a member of the group. And if you don't have the feeling that you're a member of the group, you're going to cause trouble for the group. If you want to compete within the group, well, that's not really war. That's like civil war, and Adler says, those are good. Good civil war. It's a beautiful thing. He says that the American Civil War was a beautiful thing. Fantastic. But the solution that he has to achieve global peace is that everybody has to belong to the same organization. Because if you're not belonging to the same organization, you can't engage in the same conversation because you're not asking the same questions. You're not on the same page. If you're talking legalese and somebody else is talking English grammar, right? You're talking about the same subject, two different methods of understanding. You're not talking about the same thing in the same way. So there's no way you're going to be able to achieve peace.
I would have, and this was before I read the book, and that what it struck me is that to have a world government, at least one that people would be happy to see or think it was an improvement. But as a prerequisite to that, you have to have people around the world thinking of themselves as a body politic. And we're a long way from that. In the book, he doesn't talk about it in exactly this terms. Rules of community and such come up. And so that's why I said that could be a long-term project, or I would say that would be a long-term project. He does say that maybe we're seeing, not some straight line process, but maybe we're seeing that sometimes in some places. But that's what, like I said, in a sense, it is a kind of a psychological way of saying. If you think if we all started, we got to the point where we're thinking, the developments were such that we tended to think of things that way. I guess it's one thing to say that it's impossible, at least that we know of, then it would make sense for there to be some overall government, and then within that, we would have enough of this conversation to keep the peace in a way better than we do now. Maybe.
Here.
I may add something to what has been said. If I remember correctly, Aquinas defines peace as the tranquility of order. So, adding to this office of the wise and the ruler, of course, there is this effect of tranquility if it all works really as one organization. So that's also a psychological. There's also a psychological aspect.
Having watched Adler over the years, especially on the William Buckley show, okay? Now, you know what I'm talking about. I think in Adler's mind, it was clear what organization he was talking about. He was talking about organizations like the United Nations, the European Union. He was very, very concrete. He would be crushed by Brexit.
I said to the Americans, and they were involved in the founding of these organizations. But as Terry points out, I was thinking about 500 years.
Well, in the book, that's, I'm sure that's just a guess.
Right.
But he was, these are guys after the Second World War, thinking in terms of rebuilding of Europe and
Sure.
and
And
so forth.
the threat of atomic weapons and so forth. Yes, he saw this as a kind of an imminent necessity to arrive at some sort of an agreement about how they achieve global peace, because as you said, that it was the first time in the 20th century that they could actually think practically about global peace. And one of these articles that I had sent down, and Terry had referred to it, one of the older ones, this one here, where he gave this in Rochester, New York, actually, on Christian Cultural Lectures, October 25th, 1942. And he talks about geopolitics, the term geopolitics, the way the Germans have been using it, by means of which they understood the study of land and sea and disposition of troops so that they could win the war. And then Haber says, well, global politics really comes into geopolitics as the ancient Greeks understood, involved the movement of peoples from less fertile and more hostile types of climates and so forth to more fertile ones. And it constituted more or less the Mediterranean, and it was limited by the sea. But in the 20th century, you got air power that extended the notion of geopolitics to a really global, more precisely global sense, in which global warfare then became practical. And the control of the fertile regions. And you must be thinking of Hegel. Because he was enamored by Hegel when he was younger. Hegel's philosophy of history and peoples in these kind of directions in terms of geography. But I was struck by this passage because now we're in the digital age. And we're going to be talking about this in some of the topics. Now, this geopolitical age that Albert was talking about, where air power has now enabled us to think of geopolitics in a more extended sense. Now you have the internet bringing us into a digital age that is something that Adler could not have comprehended.
And drones.
Yeah.
Sitting here in Washington, setting planes over.
Yeah.
You know, in America right now, there are calculated, in America, in our state of Florida, in America, we now have approximately 5 million long rifles installed, okay? We shoot about 500 times. 5 million goes up in the general population. Now, if that isn't a state of war within a nation, I don't know, we cannot be living in a state of peace in America today. And the language that goes with that kind of weaponry, I think.
But Adler's making the way you get to a state of peace is that human beings have the same aim, the same end with respect to the nature of politics, and the same understanding of themselves. To the extent that we belong to the same organization or the same genus. In other words, he's saying that for us to engage in productive conversation, we have to belong to the same genus. Right? We have to be on the same page with respect to the questions that we're asking, because the knower and the thing known belong to the same genus. If you're a football player and this person's a firefighter, and you're talking about this particular thing, but you're talking about it from the perspective of your organizations, you're never going to be engaging in productive conversations. You're never going to get anywhere. So the first thing that you have to do to establish something like a global peace is to establish the notion of the individuals belonging to the same organization by having the same preferences.
It's maybe a little off topic, but when the Greek book set was being revised, and I'll go back a step. The original set has references to the Bible, but the reason that there wasn't the Bible as a volume in there is they said, well, if there's any book that most people already have, it's the Bible. So we don't need to include our edition in the set. And when the second edition came up, Adler had apparently just floated the idea of, and this is a break from the overriding concept of the books of the Western world. He said, well, we should do that with the Quran as well. We should put in the page or the references to the ideas, although not including a boundary. So he may have been thinking in those terms. Is that, well, that's a start on putting this, trying to get everybody in the same language, kind of like this, well, the whole thing, how to think about, in other words, let's at least get the debate term set, even though we can't resolve the issue. So I'll throw that out there, that maybe he had some thoughts along those lines.
I think one of the things that has always struck me about Matt was that whenever he's engaging in his discussions and arguments with others, the psychology he's really working from is the faculty of psychology of medicine. He's not thinking of the human person as a collection of feelings that, like David Hume. He's always bringing it viscerally. And Thomas do those all the time. Even though he considered himself even though they don't recognize that they're doing it, it's a basic presumption. We have the external senses, we've got the internal senses, right? Common sense faculty, sense memory, so Augustinians don't think like that. You know, they've got the external senses, and then the internal sense, imagination, memory, understanding. That's a different set of faculties. And so you're going to have a different understanding of, if you wanted to come to a common agreement as to belonging to the same organization that's going to promote political peace, you have to come to a common agreement about the nature of happiness in some way.
That's how he started off his statement. He speaks of, he's almost this very Steve Thomas who speaks up on it.
Yes,
And he starts off right away.
Everybody says he's an aristocrat.
Right thinking, right action, you know?
Yes.
Right thinking, and then he starts going from there, and then he goes on further in slides, and says, are we persons or brutes, you know?
Right.
They come off the ethics, you know, he's all over the place. He speaks up on you with the string.
Yeah, slipping it in. So that you don't notice it. But if that's the case, then to promote global peace the way he's talking about it, is it possible to do this with the Western democratic idea? You know, working within that Aristotelian framework.
No, I would say it's possible to do it with the Thomistic approach, which sneaks up on you. Being pulled Quran, you know, which Adler obviously even being, because let's sneak it in for the great books, okay? Because I think Thomism is a very sneaky thing.
Historians like to say that there hasn't been a war between two powers, between two sovereign states who have a parliamentary and a constitutional government since the American Civil War, actually. Look at the great wars of the 20th century, they were between fascist countries, democratic societies. So I'm back to Eduardo's point, do we have two paradigms now that we face? I hope that we could expand that.
Yeah, well, I think
Or are you going to have this idea of Islamic conquest, which secures peace?
so what they have is they have economic crashes because of one politicians. All of a sudden, your economy.
So this is an interesting question you've never addressed before. Is Thomism a Western thing, or is it a global concept? Methodist should be global, not Western.
I would say it's transnational, certainly, and global. It's global in the sense that I think the understanding of the human person that human beings are inclined toward um, development tends to be faculty psychology. And it doesn't have necessarily all of the distinctions, that you want to find in somebody like St. Thomas, but the external, the external senses, the memory and imagination and so forth, you're going to find common agreement about the existence of these faculties. Whether or not people are going to, you're not going to find common agreement that some of these faculties, like the intellectual material, but that you have external senses and internal senses, unless you're suffering from some sort of psychological or moral disorder, then I think that commonly people would agree to this, whether they're Western or not Western. And so from that standpoint, I think the faculty of psychology is important.
Also, the appreciation for metaphor and analogy and so forth.
Right.
Worldwide, metaphors and cultural metaphors.
Yeah.
And Aquinas certainly Oscars will be one nation because in the 13th century, probably only England would resemble our modern sense of definition of
You
nation.
said about it, agree with that.
I think Aquinas would argue that he would ask us to define nation because, and he was writing, obviously there was no nation in our sense. Maybe England would qualify that. There were no nations really, so terminology would have to be cleaned up.
So, I think what Adler is indicating is that in order to achieve this kind of global peace, you have to have people having developed a sense of belonging to the same genus or the same organization. And so within the organization, you can have fights, but you have a single rule of government to the extent that there's this inclination to submit to a common goal, right? Even if it's not externally, even if you're not externally threatened, although the external threats are necessary at times, but I'm not sure, and we're going to be doing some sessions on contemplative theology here. I think Adler thought that the modern type of government, in which the majority will tended to dominate, could suffice to promote global peace if you could unite that with prudential judgment and have its aim being practical rather than contemplative. That's where I would find a weakness in his thinking, because if the chief aim of the society is to make tools, is productive, then the highest kind of friendship you're going to be able to develop is ones that are based upon being useful, helpful to making products, and war tends to become the chief kind of activity that tends to generate. If the chief aim of friendships is pleasure, as Aristotle says, like in youth, pleasure's come and go, so it doesn't have to be lasting. So the only way you could have what he's talking about become a viable, practical aim would be if you made the chief aim one of contemplative knowledge. If the political orders are chiefly inclining the members of the society to develop contemplative habits of soul, affecting their own soul, which is psychologically, and you could spread that globally, then I think what he's talking about would be feasible. But it's not, I can't see how it would be feasible if you had the chief aim as we do today. It's kind of productive. Political work. But you're not gonna be able to, it works if you can create an organization where people are, you're establishing professional friendships. Like in any organization, because you create harmony within the organization. And that's where the peace lies. But if you have anything less than an organization where people are focusing attention on the chief aim of the organization, to work beyond themselves to produce something that is reflective of human faculties, that's not going to work.
Roberto, were the founding fathers contemplative?
No, but they were Christian. I mean, for the most part, they were products of the 18th century. There was a Christian morality and the Buddhism was agreeable. So that could be
So we have genus of values there. An organization of values that was founded on.
well, there was. I mean, it was unique because they were sort of
So now, I was worrying as to your focus and attention on competition and cooperation as to why you haven't zeroed in on that aspect of this adverse discussion in relationship with jealousy.
Because if you just get on it, I mean, I don't think peace comes from government, because I'm libertarian as well, so. And I think peace comes from people being educated and striving for excellence.
Well, would that be though a social influence within the group that would come from a kind of organizational consciousness? You have to be aware that there's a kind of rational principle within the organization.
Traditionally, in Western society, that's come from education, from Protestant and Catholic education, that has that system of values in there. Okay? But as that has broken down in the education system, it's not coming from anywhere now. We now have a philosophy or a value system of the average and efficiency, not excellence. That's what I think. Okay?
Yeah, but to have the excellence being ordered, is that to have a principle of reason behind?
Yeah, that was just what the church did.
Yeah, but the church
And that's its criticism too.
the harmony of an organization comes from the members having unequal qualities and all being related to generating numerically one act. We're all cooperating to put out the fire.
But I mean, so, I mean, my mother got a grade 5 education. She cleaned homes for a living, okay? And she always said to us, whatever you do, you must do it as best you can, with excellence. That was a cultural thing that was installed within our community, okay? It was installed within an ethos of excellence that has been lost.
And that's because you lost the notion of genius.
Yes.
It's only within a real genius, or this operational organization that got a maximum of perfection.
But when you live in a society, it's atomistic. Everybody is an individual unto himself.
Right,
The only thing you have is efficiency in organization,
right.
controlled by government.
Yeah, because it's atomistic, then strictly speaking, being an organization.
Yes,
It's an art.
We're jumping ahead, but we have a psychology, and it's all based on being atomistic, okay? That there is no organization. Your definition of self doesn't come from being part of an organization. It comes because you're an atom who has finally defined yourself. That's all that counts.
Right, but so within that kind of a context, you can have the competition and the cooperation. And that's a necessary condition for having
And
the
it's,
excellence.
but it's a competition not based on excellence, it's a competition based on animal spirits.
You could have, I mean, we have that with cultures where there's culture of excellence, but it's a warrior culture.
Yeah. I used to start off with business news. I say, You know, how many here want to be successful in business? They all put their hands up. How many are prepared to live by the animal spirits? Okay? We all, so what does that mean? We'll do anything we can to be successful. We crush our mother if we have to make the corporate. You know, that's competitive. You know, then I have to work with them over the semester to prove that that was ethically unacceptable, and that would destroy them as a person. You know? So,
Yeah, because it's an art.
yeah.
You have, reason would dictate you have to place limitations on your actions in relationship to other individuals.
So then I couldn't solve this thing until Chris here got me ready to prove Trump, and I realized that the thing is, the whole culture had to be dedicated to excellence in all affairs, everything we do. You know, excellence in music, excellence in warfare, excellence in literature, excellence in competition, and our culture has become dedicated to efficiency.
Okay, now, being dedicated to efficiency can't be dedicated to developing friendships, professional friendships within the organization.
Very bottom level utilitarian friendships. Okay? But they're also, they're not the kind of friendship we had in business years ago. We would go down together. Because I was stabbing in the back as fast. It's very superficial friendship we have in companies today. Guys here in organizations know what I'm talking about. Or you have a friend in your company, really a friend, they can trust me. My best friend in the company I ever had got my job and he's no longer speaking. That's what Amazon, when you hired at Amazon, they give you a list of what is expected to be an employee here at Amazon to be successful. Fundamentally, the list says, are you prepared to throw your mother under the bus and work your 7 days a week, 16 hours a day to be Amazon executive? That's what this is. So friendship, you said, I come in here to build friendships, and colleagues, and be happy to build up. You're not our kind of man. We want the traditional concept of the animal spirits, which are groups. You know, sharp, shrewd. Thomas, the difference between prudence and being crafty. They don't want prudent people, they don't want friends, they want crafty individuals that they can control. Because they're not persons. You're not persons in America today.
Yeah, now that you want to create harmony within that, fact that they prove that other than by violence, so
It's simple, we bring in traditional consultants.
I agree with that.
Yes, just bring all this in. You can read your book on normal psychology. Good for the rest. Go ahead.
There isn't big on giving any detailed historical examples to make his case. But the one that comes to mind, Bill, is that Athens, whatever this ethos was, I mean, Thucydides kind of lays out their self-destruction.
I gotta wait Chris up here, this is his view.
Easy dialogue, justice is whatever the stronger is able to control. So Athens was able to force their own Milos into her camp. So one wonders if Thucydides is the maverick, or whether he really does represent the orator, the excellence of the individual. Oh, Chris would have to tell us.
But I think an example too is that it's why they weren't used as an example when the U.S. founders were looking at examples for what they were setting up. They had a pretty short life, very productive during this brief period, but it didn't last. If we're looking at it as a political example. So that's what I'm getting at. So we have that kind of excellence in all kinds of areas, but not in the sense that we'd be looking for something that's durable. It's something that's durable and lasting. Adler talks about perpetual peace. I'm not sure that that's with the human condition, that you think you can set up something that you can anticipate everything that's going to happen that would lead to this initially looked like a pretty good worldwide setup, but, well, we didn't see this coming. We're in pretty big trouble now. It's not explaining how you could really do that. But just, what example we're gonna look at, when we look at Athens. For that cause.
Well, just as a sort of historical link, the idea of perpetual peace is really rooted in the 18th century. I mean, Kant writes his book on perpetual peace, which is really influential in my work. Madison writes on this, and he's actually responding to Rousseau on this. So, in fact, this is something, I mean, a part of one of the optimism is this hope that they will, in fact, create perpetual peace. So Adler's picking up on that. And I think he's right to say that there's a moment of it at the time of the framing, when you actually have this unique group of people who have this common understanding of one end, who are willing to actually create this federation. But I think your point is right. I mean, it seems like that late 18th century optimism for perpetual peace was optimistic. Over to us, it now looks
Right.
overly optimistic.
Even if I look at the analysis, and this is Adler's approach to a lot of things, is he's not being misleading or insincere. They say this is the argument, in this case, just this analogy to a good national society or a good nation state, or pretty good or good enough. And he says, well, if we can just scale that up, we would have, a tolerable world government that would at least give us peace, and nobody would be so aggrieved that there'd be war. Like there wouldn't be war on the scale of international war within this worldwide society. That's the theory. Now, whether that squares with a good view of human nature, well, maybe. Well, if it doesn't, that's just kind of depressing, I guess. But that's what he's getting at. But exactly how you maintain this, just as well. This is why we have conflict, and if we can just apply the same principles worldwide, presto. And there's no, in a sense, there's no argument against it. But people would have the right to say, well, it might be worth doing, but I'm not sure that we can be 100% confident that we've got perpetual peace. Right? So that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I just I'm not sure that being committed to excellence will always lead to peace. Now, let me give you an example. In Japanese culture, there's always been a strong tradition in Zen of doing things with mindfulness. And so whatever you do is done with excellence in mind. You do it as perfectly as you can with complete mindfulness. Okay, that's the Zen concept of excellence. You make a sushi or you're doing a portrait, it is always dedicated to mindfulness and perfection. And so when they went to war in the Second World War, they also took that same sense of excellence to war with it. They did war with excellence and the competitive spirit. So the commitment to competition and excellence in and of itself does not lead to peace, rather than it leads to warfare. When we are at war in business, we must be excellent. Our product must be better than the competitors. So excellence and competition can also be used for the purpose of warfare, as well as peace. You have to be careful how we use the concept of excellence and competition. It does not, in and of itself, lead to peace. It leads to war. For example, warriors have to be excellent. Okay, more so than on the battlefield. Excellence in the brotherhood of fighting with one another is demanded. There's no place for error in war. So the animal spirits very often can lead. I'll talk about that back here when I talk about sports. The adrenaline leads to excellence in many cases. Perfection.
But even now, with respect to the Japanese, they have to have some sort of psychological unity within this animal spirit that you're talking about.
But the unity was in the Zen, in mindfulness, the Zen tradition.
Yeah, a kind of reason that dominates within the individuals, creating a kind of national friendship.
Yeah, there's a moral psychology, a lot of literature, or epistemology, or whatever, it has to be in the culture.
Right, so this is the point I was bringing up before about if if they're getting people to cooperate, and they're doing it in a way that is not pathological but is healthy, then they're going to create a situation in which people understand the profession in which they're engaged, and that has professional responsibilities as an underlying moral culture.
But as you
Before they
say,
can actually have the profession.
as you say in your latest book, all this stuff is dangerous unless you have that concept of prudence in there.
Yes.
Because if you, like as Thomas says, if the man can be excellent, he's crafty.
Yeah.
That's the dangerous thing.
One of the things that strikes me about dysfunctional businesses, dysfunctional organizations, I became conscious of this as I was doing different jobs over the years and working with different people that I knew who were professionals, like at an investment banking firm, and I was simultaneously working over with inmates, in Rikers Island and North Hill Correctional Facility. And I noticed that the investment bankers and the inmates had the same kind of emotional immaturity. I found it absolutely astounding, that these petty little things that would bother them were almost the same. That the people that were in upper level management who were able really to coordinate a harmonious operation were the individuals who could get people to become team players in the sense of establishing professional friendships. Simultaneously, they could distinguish those from other kinds of friendships that the people had and could develop a psychology within the group where they didn't mix the two up. The different levels of friendships. They're gonna have friendships within one different department, and then friendships between different departments, and friendships among people that knew one another. And if you can order those and coordinate them throughout an organization, then you'll get a kind of psychological health.
We used to have that before we had departments of human resource.
Yeah, well, I can understand.
Now think of the word,
They don't have
human resource, not even use the word personnel. That's what it all stopped.
That made you feel like you were being mined.
You're not personally, you're a member of a human resource. And when you start doing
Yeah,
that,
well, the people in the human resources don't like the notion of competition. They just want to
cooperate.
keep operating efficiency. Because they think that tends to promote inequality within the organization.
But it's the same thing with the EU. Everybody has to take in equal amount. We have to be cooperative in the number of immigrants we take in everywhere. That's what I heard last week when we were arguing about Brexit. The EU, it all has to be fair, and the wealthier countries in the EU have to get more support. It's the less wealthy countries and so forth. It's not working. Because all those nations, it's like Drucker said when Drucker, the book was written, the world is flat, and Drucker said before he died, not for long.
Well, a problem there, though, would be that, although there's a feeling that the people in Europe have some feeling that they are Europeans, but that wasn't begun with there being this European body politic. And this grows out of originally these trade agreements and so forth. And then this seemed to be an attempt to try and do it through bureaucracy. At least that's, the impression I get from here. And, it's not like there weren't a case to be made for the benefits of it and the voters. I mean, in the vote there was, 52-48, there's obviously plenty of people who would like it even in principle. But just this thing going was they weren't drawing on some feeling that we are Europeans before we are, whatever the nationalities are either. So that was in the picture. I mean, Americans can resent bureaucrats as much as anybody, I'm sure, but it doesn't it doesn't affect that idea, it's not so far, it doesn't affect that idea that we divide along those lines.
We divide on, once nation feels that we're working harder than your nation and we're giving you our money, it's all over with them. It can't hold.
Well, the example, an example that was given there was that some of these national programs that we have do in fact have big, there were big shifts of wealth in, for example, deposit insurance covering the savings and loan crunch back in the 80s. And it's, maybe statistically, it's as big a deal as some of the things that go on in Europe. But, you know, we didn't affect our idea, well, you know, we're just one country, and so that's the way it goes. And, you know, these circumstances could have been different, and we would have benefited, you know, it just didn't seem to be a big deal. Regionally, the way some of these things have played out in Europe, and I assume it's because we think of ourselves, at least now, as Americans first, and they do not think of Europeans first, and the people running the EU didn't seem to take that into sufficient account.
Yeah, you have another line, moral culture, that lies as the foundation for the generation and preservation of all of your other cultural institutions. So that if you're not, you might excel at doing this or that, but if you don't know when to do it, what to do it with this or that kind of level of effort, you know, and time and so forth, then your habits are going to be in conflict with one another. You might be great at building, you know, homes, but if you happen to be addicted, then you're, you know, because of a lack of prudent prudential judgment, then you're going to be building homes well for only for a short period of time than you would have if you had that moral culture of prudence would maintain these institutions. And they've lost pretty much in Europe that moral culture that gave them the psychological sense of belonging to the same organization, cooperating for the same aim. Without that harmony within the organization, you don't have unity. You get rid of the harmony that comes from this combination of the moral culture and the performance arts, the productive arts that are working within it. It seems to me that the organization needs a lot, it's got to collapse.
For some of you older people here watching the Adler thing, I could not think the old days of Bishop Sheen. You know?
Right.
The same thing. The old days of kind of the same. Very simple blackboard, and he was very effective with what he did in that thing.
Yeah.
There's no PowerPoints or anything.
I was thinking as Red Rock was speaking about these moral and this you know, more efficient, productive aspects of how the Greeks would, in time of war, would choose strategos, you know, a general to rule, you know, to rule the city, the state, because of course what they wanted to achieve at that time might require this kind of ruthless person who cares very little about but they would go back to the politician leader.
So this is one of the dangers that you have that we have with respect to these perpetual civil wars that get promoted so that you avoid global warfare. Is that these require the existence of political leaders who are dictators.
Yes.
And it's not, and so you can't, even though you might want to pretend that you have a Republican kind of government or a Democratic government, that strictly speaking, you have oligarchies that are required to maintain this condition of continual warfare.
Correct.
That came up in a business setting at a talk last year, which is that it's fine, well, not fine, it's not delightful, but an organization may be faced with a financial crunch and has to bring in somebody who's going to wield the axe.
Yes.
But the problem is, and everybody may say it's, it's got to be done. I don't like it. I don't like it. But, I like the end of the axe, but yeah, I understand it's got to be done. But the problem can be then, of course, then that person the piece may return to the organization, and that person is still in charge, and they can be then then the unpleasantness is intolerable.
Yes.
And destructive of the organization, just because it's just the wrong person.
They cannot make peace, they
Yes.
can end the conflict, but it doesn't mean,
Yes.
that the new state of affairs is better than.
Yes, and I suppose the dictator, the theory, part of the theory might be the dictator's got his hands full. The rest of our life, other than the demands that have to be made on us, will be left alone. And once the war is over, we'll go back to normal, and things will be still there.
Well, since we're having a week on leadership, I mean, it isn't just in business, where you bring in the leader to turn things around. I mean, I would think Francis is a turnaround pope, okay? And he's not being loved by everybody equally, and some would see him as being very ruthless, that's what he has to do. So leadership isn't about kumbaya, Very often the leadership, isn't chewing gum, he's kicking butt and taking names, and he has to turn the organization. That can be church, that can be a university, it's right thinking and right action. That leader has to engage, and that's what Edward said, and the very times, those are very painful. And he will be, and very often the leader will be hated if he does the right thing. That's where it helps to be a Thomas, as opposed to be working on empathy all the time. And Rousseau would not be a great leader, I don't think.
Well, I think this section has more or less come to an end.
So I'll make the announcement, we're gonna have dinner and then we're gonna come back to our third session, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to break for dinner, and at 7:30 we'll be back for our third and final session tonight. See you later.
We're not going to video us.